Good evening. Thousands of people from all across Hong Kong took to the streets today to demand better working conditions, a tradition on Labor Day. Protesters urged the government to standardize working hours and introduce a retirement protection scheme, while others asked for better protection for domestic helpers. Yeung reports.
It's Labor Day and thousands of workers from different employment sectors turned up at Victoria Park for various rallies and to demand better pay and rights. This afternoon's May Day rally was organised by the Confederation of Trade Unions, which has a long list of demands.
Today, our march is to continue to demand for a work-life balance with working hours regulation. We are demanding for the right to collective bargaining and working hour regulation to narrow down the wage gap and also demand for a minimum wage increase of every year. We have one last year and the government is delaying it to increase it next year. So again, it's 2 years we have to wait for any increase. And again, that will cause a lot of deterioration in livelihood for the workers in Hong Kong.
Among the protesters were domestic and migrant workers, teachers, marine department staff and builders. They chanted slogans like "Workers Unite" and "We don't want to be slaves to our work." As usual, the rallies ended up at the government's headquarters at Tamar. The protesters also accused Chief Executive Yeung of breaking an election promise by not improving labour conditions. Earlier, minor scuffles broke out at another Labor Day protest after the organisers were told they weren't allowed to get close enough to the building to hand their petition in. Around 100 demonstrators from the Neighbourhood and Workers' Service Centre marched from Chater Garden in Central to government headquarters. The organisers claimed they had followed police instructions on where to gather. Officers held back angry demonstrators who tried to get closer to the building. A government representative eventually came out and accepted the petition, but organisers ripped it up instead and handed it over. Thousands of people took part in another rally this morning organised by the Pro-Beijing Federation of Trade Unions. Some wore costumes. They gathered in Southern Playground before marching to the same place as the other marches. These protesters were demanding better retirement protection and working hours.
Ms. Yeung during the campaign has also promised to legislate, right, for the standard working hours, right. So we want the government to fulfill its promise, and also we want the government to show the government with a strong voice that we oppose expansion of the import of foreign labour and workers.
They also urged officials to ban employers from using MPF contributions as severance pay. The FTU also proposed raising the minimum wage to $39.70 from the current rate of $30. The union says that the 32% jump is based on a number of factors, including living expenses and social security payments. Organisers said around 5,000 people turned up for the rally. Meanwhile, migrant worker groups and supporters of former Indonesian domestic helper Raymond also marched, only this time from Victoria Park to the Indonesian consulate. They want better protection for the more than 300,000 maids working in the city. Specifically, they want the government to scrap a rule that forces them to live with their employers and tighten regulation of employment agencies. Raymond was thrown into the international spotlight when she was hospitalised on her return to Indonesia after claiming that her former employer tortured her. The government issued a statement in response to the protests, saying it attaches great importance to protecting labour rights and is committed to improving employees' benefits. On importing foreign labour, it insisted local workers will be given priority for employment. Yeung, ATV News.
A group of locals launched a bizarre photography competition today, aimed at capturing mainlanders going to the toilet in public during the Golden Week holiday. Meanwhile, another group hosted a parody protest as part of a campaign that will almost certainly stir cross-border tensions. Emily C. reports.
An argument broke out between a mainlander and a group of locals on busy Yeung Choi Street in Mongkok this afternoon. The man told the group to stop labeling mainlanders as people who urinate in the streets, but the group insisted they just wanted to remind visitors from across the border to follow Hong Kong's laws. The group was there to launch what they called a photography competition to capture mainland visitors defecating in public during the Labor Day Golden Week holiday, which starts today. Organizers said the event was a response to mainland internet users who called on people to come to Hong Kong and defecate on the streets. The row began last week when a video of a mainland toddler urinating on a road in Mongkok appeared online and sparked a heated debate between locals and mainlanders on the internet. The footage prompted two ministers to urge Hong Kong residents to be more understanding towards cross-border visitors. Their comments angered some Hong Kongers who feel overwhelmed by the rapidly growing number of mainland visitors. They include the group Civic Passion, who went to vent their frustration in Tsim Sha Tsui this afternoon. Many dressed up as Red Guards and sang the Chinese anthem. Holding Chinese and Communist Party flags, they urge mainland visitors to love their country and party, stay at home, and consume China-made products to boost the country's GDP. The group marched and chanted slogans on Canton Road, a popular shopping destination for mainland visitors. The supporters of mainlanders labeled the parody marchers traitors and told them to stop creating conflict between the two sides of the border. Today wasn't the first time the group organized a parody protest, as they held a similar one back in March. That demonstration was considered a follow-up to the controversial anti-mainlander protest in February, in which protesters yelled and hurled insults at mainland shoppers on Canton Road, who they accused of overcrowding the city and hogging its resources. The events drew condemnation from both Beijing and Chief Executive Yeung.
Health Minister Raymond says he's very concerned about the recent surge in respiratory illness cases in the Middle East, which could be transmitted between humans. He's appealed to travelers to the affected countries to avoid wildlife. Edna Day reports.
Cases of the potentially deadly Middle East respiratory syndrome or MERS are surging, with over 300 reported, over 100 of them fatal, to the World Health Organization. Recently, there have been a significant number of infections in healthcare facilities in Saudi Arabia's coastal business hub of Jeddah and in Abu Dhabi, both involving healthcare workers. Health Minister Raymond says the government is very concerned about the recent development of the disease after travelers came down with it after visiting the Middle East. Ko also said there's evidence that the disease could be transmitted between humans.
The recent number of imported cases have steeply increased, as well as there have been two recent cases of travelers returning from the Middle East to Southeast Asia, having contracted the illness. On the other hand, there are also strong evidence pointing to the fact that MERS have an ability to be transmitted between humans.
Ko also advised travelers to stay away from wildlife.
I would appeal to Hong Kong citizens, if you are traveling to the affected areas, please do not go into contact with wild animals, in particular camels, because there were already scientific evidence pointing to the fact that the camels in the Middle East area can carry the coronavirus causing MERS.
Ko said the health department has urged travel agents in Hong Kong not to arrange activities with camels for travelers booking holidays.
Pan-Democrat lawmakers are studying ways to limit LegCo President Zhang Yuxing's power to cut filibusters short. At the same time, some pro-establishment lawmakers have apologized for not showing up for yesterday's budget debate, which forced Zhang to adjourn the meeting. Emily Steele reports.
Radical lawmakers trying to delay the passing of the budget bill succeeded yesterday by managing to postpone the debate for a week. LegCo President Zhang Yuxing was forced to adjourn the session due to a lack of quorum, as only 34 out of 70 lawmakers were in the chamber when the radicals demanded a headcount, the 8th during the 4-hour meeting. The pan-Democrat and pro-establishment camps pointed fingers at each other for the fiasco. Leung from the League of Social Democrats was blamed for leaving at the last minute, while the radicals said the pro-Beijing camp should have enough people present since they support the budget. Today, Ip Kwok Kim from the pro-government DAB party apologized on behalf of some of his colleagues who did not show up in yesterday's debate. It's every lawmaker's responsibility to attend LegCo meetings, said Ip. He added that pro-Beijing lawmakers have agreed that from now on, they will return to the chamber within 5 minutes of the quorum bell going off. Meanwhile, the pan-Democrats say they're trying to think of ways to limit Zhang's power to cut filibusters short. He's killed marathon debates twice in the past 2 years, citing a LegCo rule allowing him to act in a situation not covered by other rules. That led to accusations that he abused his powers. Unionist lawmaker Lee Chuk-yen says if the president has unlimited powers to kill filibusters whenever he wants, they will become pointless. He said pan-Democrats are looking into the possibility of amending LegCo's rules, such as barring Zhang from cutting a filibuster if a third of the chamber supports it. Every lawmaker has the right to filibuster, and it gives minority members a chance to block bills they disagree with, said Lee. We are worried that if and when the authorities try to push bad laws like Article 23, we need to make sure we can filibuster the bill, guard the gate, and block its passage. But he admitted that if lawmakers always filibuster, the public will lose faith in them, as most people don't want to see LegCo meetings adjourned. Critics also say millions of taxpayer dollars are wasted on what they see as meaningless debates.
President Xi Jinping has called for decisive action against terrorism following an attack at a railway station in troubled Xinjiang region. 3 people were killed, 2 of them the attackers, and 79 injured in last night's blast, which came as Xi ended his first trip to the region. Here's Anna Zhe.
Armed paramilitary officers and riot police were immediately deployed to Urumqi's South Railway Station, the biggest in Xinjiang, after the attack at around 7 p.m. last night. All entrances to the station were cordoned off and trains suspended, just as a train from Chengdu, capital of Sichuan province, was arriving. According to mainland media, knife-wielding attackers went on a stabbing spree at the exit of the arrival hall, and around the same time, the explosion happened. It's believed the blast came from some luggage left on the ground between the station exit and a bus stop. 3 people were killed and at least 79 injured in the attack. It's believed that 2 of those who died were behind the attack.